Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Warther, and I'm senior lecturer in accounting here at Georgia Southwestern State University. And tonight, I want to talk a little bit about Chapter 17, activity-based costing. I put out in GoView today a listing of multiple choice questions on activity-based costing. And these are real similar to the ones you're going to see on the exam the weekend of October 22nd. But what I want to do is just go over three of these questions so you get an idea of how activity-based costing works. Let me first tell you that this is it's not a very difficult chapter. I mean, I know it looks difficult, but really, this is very similar to Chapter 15 in that you got to develop a rate. But with activity-based costing, you're developing multiple rates. Okay, you're not just developing a one predetermined overhead rate like you were in Chapter 15. Here you got multiple rates. And that's why they call it activity-based costing, because what we did is we looked at workers' activities in manufacturing a product, and we broke the direct labor hours. Instead of just using direct labor hours and machine hours, we came up with other activities that really created overhead cost. And thus, instead of being so broad with direct labor hours and machine hours, now we drill down or we detail down more on what an employee's activities are and how they contribute to the overhead of the actual product, these different activities. So, and the actual computations of the problems, it's more busy work than anything else. It's not really hard. It's just making sure you do step by step and having the right step in place, in order. And the very first thing you have to do is you have to figure out your rates. Now, if you take a look at problem 79, this is a typical activity-based costing problem. It tells you that there's $2,700,000 of overhead in three departments. Okay, ordering and receiving, mixing and testing. Okay, so if you look over here where it says department and expected use of driver, you can see that if you add up the three costs, it comes up to $2,700,000. Okay, so that cost, and that cost all added up gives you $2,700,000. Now, the driver, which is the activity that's actually driving the cost of ordering and receiving, the actual driver is 2,000. Okay, so there must have been 2,000 moves to drive that $800,000 cost. Well, what we want to do is figure out a rate. So we can look at each department and we can take the overhead cost over the driver, the total driver units, and we can figure out a rate. Okay, so for example, ordering and mixing, we take this $800,000 overhead cost and put it over 2,000 units of ordering and mixing, and we get a $400 rate per ordering and mixing unit. Okay? Now we do the same thing for mixing and testing. We see that we have $1 million cost, and we got 50,000 moves or whatever type of moves they were to mix whatever they were mixing. And so if we put the $1 million over the 50,000, we get a $20 per mixing move. And then we do the same thing for testing. Okay, $900,000 total overhead for testing. And the expected moves for testing is 1,500 moves. So basically, you got yourself three rates, okay? A rate for ordering and receiving, a rate for mixing, and a rate for testing, okay? Multiple rates, not just one. So what's next? Okay, the problem, and this is a typical activity-based costing problem, what it'll say production information for slime, okay? One of the different products that they produce gives you, their use of each of the drivers, each of the three drivers, okay? So if slime uses 1,600 moves for ordering and receiving, you can take 1,600 times 400, okay? And that gives you an overhead cost of $640,000, okay, for ordering and receiving for slime. Okay, let's just write slime up here so we know what we're working with. Okay, and this is ordering and receiving. Okay, so you got $640,000 of overhead that we're going to allocate to ordering and receiving for slime. Now let's go to mixing. Okay, and we see that mixing uses 30,000 of the total 50,000 moves. Okay, so let's take the 30,000 and let's multiply it times the rate for mixing, which is 20, and we come up with 600,000 total overhead for mixing. Okay, and now last we have testing, and we see that testing uses 1,000 moves, and our testing rate was $600 per move, so that gives us $600,000 of overhead for testing allocated to the testing driver for the product slime. Okay, so then all you do is you add up all three drivers, all three overhead costs per driver. Okay, and if you add 600,000 plus 600,000 plus 640,000, you should come up with 1,840,000. And that will be the total overhead you will allocate to the slime product using three different activities. So again, what we did was we looked at the estimated overhead and we put it over the total driver of everything, all the products that are produced. And we came up with a rate. Okay, that rate, that 400, is $400 per ordering and receiving move. So if we have 1,600 moves for slime, we allocate $640,000. 1,600 times 400, we allocate $640,000 of overhead to slime for the ordering and receiving activity. Okay, these are all activities, and in chapter 15 that would have probably been all grouped into direct labor, but now with activity-based costing we break direct labor down into the different activities that make up direct labor. Okay, so that's number 79. Now, let me erase this quick and let me go over another problem that uses traditional costing or overhead allocation, and this will be very similar to what we did in chapter 15. Okay, let's look at the next problem down, number 84. Johnstown Company manufactures two products, board 12 and case 165. Johnstown's overhead costs consist of setting up machines, $1,600,000. Okay, I always write everything down. Okay, this is overhead. Okay. Machining, $3,600,000. Okay, this is machining, and this is setup. And inspecting, okay, $1,200,000. Inspecting. Okay? Now, it says information on the two products is, okay, and there's direct labor hours, machine setups, machine hours, and inspections. Now, we can do this either way. We could figure this out using activity-based costing, or we could figure this out using traditional, which is chapter 15. Okay, they want us to use traditional costing, okay, using direct labor hours is what they want us to do, okay? So let's just look at it once. What would you use? Okay, direct labor hours. Well, for one thing, then we have to add all three of these costs up. And we would go to our direct labor hours. And if we look at our direct labor hours, I see where board 12 has 15,000 and case 165 has 25,000. So if we add the 15,000 plus the 25,000, okay, we get 40,000 total direct labor hours. Okay, this is the traditional way we used to do it in chapter 15. Okay, so let's add these three up, these three numbers, and we should come out with $6,400,000. $6,400,000 of total overhead. Okay, and if we add up the 15 into 25,000, we come up with 40,000 total direct labor hours. Okay, so in this case, we just want to get one rate. Okay, so let's just look for one rate. Okay, let's take this, the $600,400,000, and put it over the 40,000, and we should get a rate of $160 per direct labor hour. Okay, now it says overhead applied to board 12. Okay, board 12 is the product. Okay, using traditional costing, using direct labor hours is. Okay, all we got to do is look at board 12's direct labor hours, which are 15,000, and take that rate and multiply it times 15,000. And what do we get? We get 2,400,000. Okay, so that would be using the traditional way that we did it in chapter 15, using direct labor hours as our base right here. That would mean the total overhead that we would apply to board 12 is 2,400,000. Okay, now that's not activity-based costing, that's traditional costing. That's the way we did it in chapter 15. You probably will see at least one question, one problem like this on the exam using traditional costing. Most of the activity-based problems will be very similar to what you see here, but I probably will put one question on traditional costing. Okay, so that's number 84. All right, let's do one more. And with one more activity-based costing problem, I think that should do it for you. You should be able to do anything that's on the exam or any problems in Wiley Plus or even in the book. And incidentally, I did put all the solutions to the exercises and the problems out in GoView. So if you go out to GoView, you should see the solutions to both the exercises and the problems. And don't forget now, in Wiley Plus, the problems I put out in Wiley Plus come right from the book. So if you get stuck on a problem in Wiley Plus, all you got to do is go to the chapter in the text, and you've got the solution. The numbers in Wiley Plus will just be a little different than the numbers in Wiley in the book, in the solution. So you can look at the answer in the book and work through it manually, and then you'll be able to go out to Wiley Plus and get the entire problem right. I mean, it's really a gift for you, I think. I mean, you're going to get, if you get all the homework correctly, you're going to get an extra 40 points at the end of the semester to help you with your exams. So, but don't forget now, you still need 195 points on the 3 exams to qualify for all that homework, all those extra homework points. If you don't get the 195 points, you can't pass the class. But we will be having a quiz in several weeks. I'm not sure. It may even come next weekend. And it will be on chapter 14 and 15. And that quiz will be worth 10 points. There'll be 10 multiple choice questions. And it will be in Wiley Plus. So that will be next weekend, probably the weekend of October 7th. And I'll give you 3 days to get the quiz done. But it gives you a chance to pick up an extra 10 points, and you can add those 10 points to your exam 1 score. Okay, now let's complete the activity-based costing problems. At least do one more of these problems, that I sent you today. Let's look at number 92. Here again, $320,000 of overhead costs in 3 main departments. Okay, setup, machining, and packing. Okay, those are the 3 departments. And it tells you the overhead that they incur. The total has to be $320,000. Okay, so $20,000 is in setup. $220,000 is in machining, and packing is $80,000. Okay, those are the total dollar amounts of overhead that those 3 departments incurred. Now, they tell you now the setup department performs 40 setups per year. The machining department works 5,000 hours, and the packing department packs 500 orders per year. Okay, so if they wouldn't tell you that, you could look at the data here and see where it says number of setups, product A1 and AB. If you add the 20 and the 20 together, you get the 40 that they tell you that they use a year. Okay, so if they didn't tell you any of this in the problem, you could look at the data and you could figure out by adding up, by getting the totals of these activities, you could figure out what they were. Okay, it's fairly simple. Okay, so when I add the 20 and the 20 together for setups, I get 40 setups. Okay, so let's go to machine hours. Okay, because that would be the driver for machinery. Okay, and I add 1,000 and the 4,000 together, and I get 5,000. Okay, and then let's go to orders packed. And orders packed, if I add 150 and 350, I get 500 orders packed. Okay, so there's your 3 drivers, your total of your 3 drivers. So now, if you divide the 20,000 by the 40 and the 220,000 by the 5,000 and the 80,000 by the 500, you should get 3 rates. Okay, and I've already calculated these rates For setup, it should be 500 per setup. For machinery, you should get 44 for machinery. And for packing, you should get 160. Okay, so you got three different rates. Again, multiple rates. That's what activity-based costing is all about. Now, it says using ABC, activity-based costing, how much overhead is assigned to product A1 each year? Okay, if we go to product A1 and we look at the number of setups, okay, there's 20 setups in A1, okay? Now, what's the rate for setups? 500 setups, okay? So 20 times 500. Machinery, there's 1,000 machine hours for A1, okay, so 1,000 machine hours. And what is the rate for machinery? 44, okay. And for orders packed, there's 150 orders packed, okay, for product A1. So 150 times 160, okay. And let's just multiply those out, and let's see what we get. 20 times 500 should be 10,000. 1,000 times 44 should be 44,000. And 150 times 160 should be 24,000. Okay, so for the three different activities, setup, machinery, and packing, you have 10,000 total overhead allocated to product A1 for setup, 44,000 in machinery overhead allocated to A1, and 24,000 of packing activity allocated to product A1. Okay, so let's add all three of those overhead costs up, and we come up with $78,000, the total overhead that would be allocated to product A1 using activity-based costing. Now again, I want to emphasize, really it's about multiple rates, and you pretty much can associate the driver, with the actual activity. I mean, just look at it like this. What is driving the cost? These are costs of setup, cost of machinery, cost of packing. Okay, these are activities, the denominator. They're the activities that are driving that cost. Okay, so we're just really getting three different rates, and then we're looking at those activities for a particular product, and we're taking the rates and we're multiplying the rates times the activity for the particular product, and that's what gives us the overhead allocated to that particular product for that particular activity. So with traditional costing like we used in chapter 15, we just had one overhead amount. Here we have three different activities that make up the final overhead amount that we are going to allocate to product A1. Okay, so that's, and you will pretty much get the driver given to you. I mean, it'll be pretty self-explanatory like it is in this problem. I mean, machining can be associated with machine hours, setup, number of setups, packing, orders packed. I mean, it really, I mean, it's kind of common sense that you can associate the driver with the cost. So all that information will all be given to you. Okay, but these are examples of the kind of problems you're going to see on the next exam for chapter 17. Now, there will be a couple theoretical questions that you'll have to read in the beginning of chapter 17 that I'll ask. Benefits of traditional costing, difficulties with, benefits of activity-based costing, or difficulties using activity-based costing. Why don't companies want to use it? It is more expensive than traditional costing. It does take longer, because you are detailing out activities. There'll be those kind of questions too, but for the most part, most of the questions will be these computational type questions. So if you know how to do this packet, and also I think there's another packet on the internet in GoView that I put out there that you can practice with, but basically they're the same kind of problems, the same exact things. Okay, and if they would ask you how much overhead would be allocated to say just one activity like packing, you could say, okay, all you'd have to do is figure out the rate for packing, and you'd come down here and you'd look at how many moves product A1 used in packing, and this would be the amount of overhead allocated just for the packing activity. Okay, I notice sometimes problems ask that. They may not ask you to sum up the total overhead. They may just ask you what the overhead is for one activity. So really then in that case, usually you just have to devise one rate, okay, if they ask you that. But there may be one or two problems like that, but most of them are going to be similar to the kind of problems you see in this packet. Okay, that should do it for Chapter 17. I wanted to cover some of these problems in the packet because that pretty much, if you know these, you can pretty much do the problems for the homework and even the exercises if you want to look at them. But I'll be talking more about the test in the coming weeks. I know the exam is the weekend of October 22nd, but I'll probably do a video probably at the beginning of next week on Chapter 18. Chapter 18 is a very important chapter. Probably the brunt of the test, I would say out of the 35 questions, I would say Chapter 18, 20 would come from Chapter 18, probably 8 from Chapter 17, and probably another 7 from Chapter 19. And we're only going to cover part of Chapter 19. We're not going to cover the whole chapter. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week for a video on Chapter 18.